even when things are going so wrong, even when there are no answers to our questions. Because when you look at it in the long run, look at it in the bigger picture, God is sovereign and He's fighting to turn around what is evil for good. And sometimes it definitely doesn't make sense at the moment, but that's who He is. He's proven Himself over and over again. So can we just say that? Can we just sing that together? Why don't you just put your hands out if you don't mind? No matter what comes my way, no matter what comes my way, my heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. No matter what comes my way, no matter what comes my way, my heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. Sing it. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Your glorious name. Your glorious name. Who am I that the Lord of all the earth will care to know my name, will care to feel my hurt? Who am I that the bright and morning star would choose to light the way for my ever-wandering heart? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading into day and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling. And you told me who I am. I'm yours. I'm yours. Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice that comes to see will call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of Lord. Every blessing you pour out, we will turn it back into praise. Because we know that every good thing comes from you, Lord. You're the Father of lights. So we surrender before you. Surrender our will, our desires. And Lord, we know that there's so much more. There's so much more when we are within your will, when we are in sync with what you want to do. There's so much more. So keep our hearts in that place that we can be blessed, that you can access, Lord. Take away hardness, Lord. And even when we are in the storm, let us know that the storm is not in us because of you. Because your voice calmed the storm. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray.
Dr. AKASH RYALL, for those of you who are new, is the director of the Bethany Institutions, and he was born and brought up in Bangalore. He had the good fortune of doing a master's degree in educational administration in California and a degree in philosophy in education from the University of Berkeley, California. He also worked in Roosevelt High, Glendale Middle School and Pasadena Elementary School, again in the US. And he enjoys working with children and has been in the field of education for 30 years. Jokes apart, Nicole, Noah and I are blessed to have him in our lives because he spoils us rotten. And today you have the right man for the job because he lives his religion behind closed doors also. He begins and ends every single day on his knees. He reads the Bible every day. He researches the Bible and he's passionate about the Bible. Over to you.
Jabez started out by saying Solomon in the Bible was one of the wisest men. And sometimes I wonder, he had 999 wives. That aside, I'm thinking he could have had 999 mothers-in-law to deal with. So I don't know how wise he was looking at that. This year, it's been about 45 odd days since the year has started, and I thought, we all begin the year all pumped up and ready to have resolutions and to change some of our ways. And 45 days from the 1st of Jan or around that time, how many of you made a resolution or tried to have something in place? Okay, just 4 or 5 of us. All right. That's okay. That's good because, and I don't know whether this is applicable to you because a friend of mine sent this to me. He said, may all your troubles and pains last as long as your New Year resolution. Because sometimes it lasts just for a few days. My resolution for 2023 was to accomplish everything I set out to do in 2022, which I should have done in 2021, because I made a promise in 2020, which I planned out in 2019. But that's what happens to us sometimes. We plan and we want to do this, and I don't know what happens along the way. Everything falls on the roadside. But I want to tell you this morning that every morning when you get up, and you see dusk change into dawn, I think it's important for us, at least from tomorrow, to say a little thank you to God for a new day, for a new year in our lives. So I'm going to wish you all a happy new year today, because from 11th of Feb 2023 to Feb 10th 2024 will be a new year, right? So look at your neighbors and say Happy New Year. I don't think you've ever done something as weird as that. But it's okay, because every day is a new day, and and every day begins a new year for us. I love one person and I admire him, and unfortunately he's no more. But when I read about this man and I heard about him and I heard him speak, I changed my way of living. His name is Nelson Mandela, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the man as we go on today. But I just want to tell you this. You know, he was in prison for 27 years, almost a lifetime, 28 years. And when he was going to walk out of that prison, he stood behind that door and he said this to himself. He said, "Before I walk out of this prison door, I have to leave behind all the anger and the pain and the bitterness that I suffered and felt for all these years. And if I don't leave it behind, I will still be in prison." So today, I want to tell you, I know each one of us have had times in our lives when we felt pain, when we felt anger, and when we felt bitter about something that happened. And remember what this man said. He stood at that prison door 27 years. This was a prison called REVAMP prison. It was on a little island in South Africa. And before he walked out, he told himself this: I'm going to leave behind anger, pain, and bitterness, because otherwise I'll still be in prison. So many of us have imprisoned ourselves inside these walls of anger and pain and bitterness. But he went on to say, holding grudges don't make us strong. It only makes us bitter and weak. And then he said, forgiveness doesn't make us weak. It sets us free and makes us strong. Okay? So remember that before I get into today's little message, it's going to be a revision for Mom and for Mona and for Robert, because I said this at New Year's in BICF. And I'm using the word script as an acronym for this morning's little talk. And I want you, if all of you have a little notebook and a pen? If you don't, there are some books and pens here in front. I think the people at the back, you have. If you don't have, put your hands up. I read somewhere the meaning of the word vision is to actually see something in front of you. So if this is going to make any sense, just make a little note of what makes sense to you, key words and phrases, and keep it on your office table or at home, your bedside table? No, it's not. Your bedside table. And I didn't sleep too well last night because I was worried about this talk this morning. And look at it ever so often so that you get a little refresher. So SCRIPT, if you can write those words down vertically, SCRIPT. S stands for seek your inner strength, or seek your inner strengths. Because I'm going to ask you to think of at least 3 inner strengths of yours and make a note of it. So seek your inner strengths. C stands for challenge your calling. Challenge your calling. Each of us have a calling, and we need to challenge that. S, C. R is to restrict your regrets. Or you'll write restrict my regrets. Challenge my calling. Seek my inner strengths. I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. Just cut out your and write mine. I invite my imperfections. Invite my imperfections. P would be pursue my purpose / passion. Pursue my purpose / passion. And T, think thankfully. So flip the page over and we'll go to the first one, seek my inner strengths. So let me tell you folks, we're quite skilled at rattling off our flaws. If anyone asks us what are the problems we have, what are the things we can't do, we'll rattle off a whole list of things that we can't do. But it's important for us to identify our strengths. God has given us strengths and talents, and today we have to seek them out if we haven't already done that. Okay? And it's not egotistical. In fact, it's critical for empowering our story. We all have a story to tell. So unless we seek our inner strengths, we can't tell our story. Okay? And once we know our strengths, then we can use it at our workplace, we can use it at home, wherever. And contradictory to what Mona said, I think I've been a lousy husband, I've been a okay kind of father, I've been a terrible son, I know, for a long time, and now I try and make up for my sins by going and having lunch with my mother every afternoon. But if we find our inner strengths, that's when we can make a difference to the people around us. And for each of these 5 or 6 little topics, I want to use someone from the Bible who did what they did to explain the point I'm talking about. So here, David, I love David from the Bible, and there were 3 things that he really dug deep into and used. He was a fantastic poet. Out of the 150 Psalms in the Bible, I think he wrote about 75 of them. He was a great musician. Every time King Saul, the first king of Israel, would feel down and gloomy, he would send for David to come and play the harp. He would come and play the harp, and King Saul. So he used music. That was one of his inner strengths. He wrote these poems, and of course, he was a great fighter. In fact, he fought and he killed so many people that because of the blood on his hands, he couldn't build God's house, and his son got that opportunity. But the fact is here that we need to use our inner strengths to make a difference in our lives and the people around us. So take 30 seconds and write down at least 3 things that you feel you're good at. Write it down as a reminder and as something that you need to do from today onwards. Tap into your inner strengths. If not 3, at least 2. If not 2, at least 1. You have something. Okay, if you've done that, we'll move on to challenge your calling. See, let me tell you about myself. I don't know how many of you know that I was in advertising at one time in my life, and I really enjoyed it. I was first in a company called Odyssey, which was the video production unit of another company, a bigger company, or the mother company called MA. No pun there. MAA was Marketing and Advertising Associates, and they owned Odyssey, which was the video production unit, and I enjoyed myself over there. And one day, the owner's wife, she was the creative director of now Ma Bozell. Her name was Sadika Peerboy. She came to Odyssey and she said, listen, we need a film and TV executive in the main advertising company, and one of you 6 people over here will be chosen. And she gave us written tests and practical tests, and then finally she came to see who would be the best person over there. And I don't say this with pride, with all humility, she chose AKASH RYALL. And so I'm thank you to people who clapped for me. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Rani and Sangeeta. I will look into your increments when the time comes. Both of you all. So I moved from Lavelle Road, where Odyssey was, and the old airport road there was this fancy building, Ma Bozell, and I moved over there, and I was their only film and TV executive, and I enjoyed my life over there because I was also model coordinator. So I worked with all the good-looking people in India. in Mumbai. Five cities: Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai, and Bangalore. So I would fly almost every other week, stay in a 5-star hotel in those days, and my salary was 15,000 rupees, which was a lot of money in the late 80s. And so I was enjoying myself over there when I got this calling to come and join Bethany. And my mom and dad spoke to me. I remember a relative of mine, Eugene, who was on the board at that time, Eugene Titus, he spoke to me and he said, Akash, you know what, Bethany can give you 5,000 rupees a month. And I keep thinking of Robbie. When he joined, I think he got 500 a month or something. Right, Robbie? 125 rupees a month when he joined Bethany. So I said, why should I leave this place where I'm traveling? I don't have to come. I was told that I have to come formally dressed, have to wear a tie, formal shoes. Over there I could go in jeans. I had an accident once and I scraped both my knees. I was allowed to go in shorts to work. Can you imagine? And here I had to come. I remember my first interview in Bethany. I wore a tie, I think, for the first time. And I sat down in front of this lady who was like the Iron Lady of Education, Dr. AKASH RYALL. She had this very strict demeanor. She was a strict person. And I was told, Akash, you have to speak really well and slowly and carefully in front of her. And I went and sat down and she started laughing. My tie went into my cup of tea. I had not put a tie pin. So that was me when I joined Bethany. But today when I look back, I think that was my calling. And sometimes, we'll find all the excuses in the world when we think that our plans will go wrong. But we have to really examine and think, is this our calling? Is this what we're supposed to do? Work with children. Be in the teaching community. Be educators. Is this really our calling? Because sometimes we are scripting mental catastrophes that sometimes won't really happen. But we're always worried as to whether this is going to be our end game. My advice is pray and challenge yourself, and you will realize whether it's your calling or not. Nelson Mandela was a young little fellow. He was born into a tribe called the Temso. I'll just make this really brief. The tribe was Temso. His father was an African chieftain. And in his book, if you should read one book, if you've not read too many books, this book is a must read. It's called The Long Walk to Freedom. And it's an autobiography by him. It is just a beautifully written book. Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. And in that book he talks about how he grows up and how his father would hold his hand and take him to these meetings where all the chieftains from the different tribes would sit in a circle. And he says he learned two things. One is to speak last, to give everybody a chance to speak. That's what his father would do. But he says, when he spoke, everyone listened. I forget what the second thing was, but anyway, he talks about how he learned so much from his father, and then he went on to study law, and then he joined something called the ANC, the African National Congress, and their main fight was against apartheid. And you know what apartheid means? It means in Afrikaan or Afrikaner, it means apartness. It means segregation. The whites were supreme and the blacks were down there. And that was his entire fight, lifelong. He did more things in jail because even there was discrimination. All the blacks had to wear short pants and a vest even during the cruel cold winter. And he fought and he got that changed because the white prisoners could wear trousers and a shirt, but the blacks couldn't. During those 27 years, he said, I challenged my calling. Is this what I really want to do? Because his mother passed away and he begged them to let him go for her funeral, but they said no. Some years later, his young daughter met with an accident and she died, and they didn't let him go for her funeral either. He came out. He said, "It all makes sense to me because this was my calling." And then you know what happened after that. He became the president, and he made so many changes. The person from the Bible who I feel really challenged his calling was Moses. And I love the story of Moses also because, you know, he was educated. He went to a university, the Egyptian university, and that's how he probably would have written those books because he was an educated person. And I'm told the front, when he entered the university, there was these huge, it was called Cleopatra's Needle. And I don't know if Auntie Evangeline has seen it. I believe one of those needles, Cleopatra's Needles, is in the embankment of Thames. And the other one is in Rome, in Italy. So he didn't go. Anyway, when he was a young man and he led all the people, or before he led the people out of Egypt, when they were slaves in Egypt, he saw something that disheartened him. And then he went and killed an Egyptian taskmaster or slave master, they were called. And one of the Jews saw this. So the next day when he tried to correct the Jew, that person said, "Oh, will you kill me too now if you did something that way?" And then Moses was really scared because he thought he got away with murder and no one noticed. But so he ran away into the desert. And when he was in the desert for many, many years, that very same desert that the Israelites would come into later and wander around for 40 years, when he was there, God chose him at this burning bush and told him, "Will you go back and lead the people?" And Moses refused 5 times. And that's why I asked Sarup and the worship team to sing that song, because he said, "Who am I?" He said, "I'm insignificant. I'm a nobody." And God said, "No, you're my chosen servant, and I will show you the way." Then he said, I'm ignorant. They won't listen to me. What can I tell these people? How can I go back and say, "Come out with me"? He said, "I'm ignorant." But God said, "Don't worry, I'll tell you what to say." And then he says, "No," again, and he said, "I'm impotent. I can't do it. I can't convince them." And God says, "I will show you miracles that you will do and that we still talk about today." Then he says, "I'm incompetent. I'm not eloquent." He had a stutter. He said, "But I can't talk properly." And you want me to go and be a leader? And then again, finally, for the 5th time, he refuses. And he says, "I'm irrelevant. I'm a nobody." But at the end of the day, he challenged his calling. And you have to challenge your calling in 2023, Feb 11th, and see what and where you have to go. Restrict your regrets. We berate ourselves over decisions that we make or things that we've said or not said. And we've all had less than stellar moments in our lives. And sometimes, when we live in regret, we can just spiral down and we'll go down. And there's no hope for us. And that's why today I stand here and I'll say it openly. I admire Bala ma'am, I admire Anita, I admire Soumya and Ashima and others who've lost loved ones along the way, my mother, and who've overcome it. I mean, it's so difficult as it is. But when you lose somebody who is your blood, who is so close to you, and you are able to overcome it and not live and keep living in regret. I know Ashima struggled for some time. And it's so difficult. And we all have those times when we say, "Why me? Why me? Why has it come on us?" But we've got to restrict our regrets. It's important to cry, it's important to grieve, but it's also important to move on. And in the Bible, I'll tell you 3 things that you can do if that is your situation sometimes. If we can, we need to apologize to the people around us. We need to learn from our mistakes. And we need to not commit those mistakes again. Those are 3 things that we can do if we are in that kind of a situation, but we need to use our mistakes to drive our growth. And in the Bible, I'm reminded of Naomi and Ruth. We all know that story of Naomi, this lady who left Judea and she went across to Moab because there was famine over here. But that was the wrong decision, and she lost her husband, and she lost her 2 sons, and she lost one daughter-in-law. Orpah walked away. But Ruth said, I'll follow you and I'll come with you. And when she goes back to her city, she goes back and says, don't call me Naomi, because Naomi means pleasant and happiness and everything like that. She said, call me Mara, because I'm bitter. But as we read the story, she encourages Ruth to do well, and Ruth does well. She gets married, and in that line comes David and Jesus from that same line. Now, if she did not restrict her regrets, she lost her husband, she lost her 2 only sons. She could have gone into a corner and just withered away, but she didn't. Another person from the Bible who didn't restrict his regrets was a guy called Saul. He went after the Christians. I think he was one of the first terrorists. He went after the Christians. Went after the Jews, because he said, this religion is crazy. He got a declaration from the Pharisees that he could go and attack and capture and even kill and he killed so many people. He was responsible for the stoning and the killing of Stephen. And the same man on the road to Damascus, he gets blind and he changes, and his name changes also from Saul to Paul. And he's written more pages in our Bible than anyone else. There was just such a change. He didn't restrict his regrets. He could have lived in regret, saying that I was the one who persecuted God's chosen people. But he didn't. He changed it around. He planted churches. I love him. He was one of the first missionaries. And unlike our pastors and our priests, you know what his job was to do? Was to go and start a church and then move on. He just left it alone. Here some of our religious leaders like to stick on, be comfortable, be happy around there. But that's not actually what God wants the leaders to do. They have to plant a church and move on. And that's what he did. So he didn't restrict his regrets. And I want y'all to move on also. Don't put a hold on all your regrets. Alright? We'll move on to the next one, which is invite your imperfections. Has any one of you achieved perfection as yet? No one? No? Me neither. And we're never going to, because every time we define and we say this is what perfection is, it changes. Because the world is just changing. So the definition keeps changing. So invite your imperfections. All of us cannot sing like Saru or Meera. All of us cannot paint and draw like some of the art teachers and some of the students we have. God has given us, and that's why we have to seek our inner strengths. Once we do that, then we can invite our imperfections and be happy with who we are. God chose so many imperfect people in the Bible. The first person, the big daddy of Christianity, is a guy called Abraham. And he was a liar. He didn't lie once, he lied I don't know how many times. Every time he moved with his wife, he had a beautiful wife, Sarah. And he was scared that every time a king would take her away and kill him, so he would say that she's my sister, not my wife. He was a liar. Abraham. Elijah, this great prophet, he wins a battle with false prophets, the prophets of Baal. They worshipped a god called Baal, and he wins a battle against them. And then after that, he gets so depressed. He runs away, he doesn't want to eat, he can't sleep at night. This holy man, this prophet, this biblical hero, this person of faith was seriously depressed, but God used him. He used Joseph. Joseph was abused. His brothers abused him. He was thrown in prison for something he didn't do. But he was used so wonderfully. Job, he went from being one of the richest people at that time and being healthy to being seriously sick. I think he had something worse than COVID-19, 20, 21, 22, 23. It was terrible, his disease. But he was fine, finally. What about Gideon? It's almost laughable. This man, Gideon, he was fearful, he doubted God, and he put some meat on an altar, and fire from heaven burns up the meat, and then he looks up and he says, God, I need a sign. It's almost laughable. But Gideon saved his people from the Midianites. He was used mightily also. So the point is, it's okay. We are all imperfect. We are sinners. I told you, I was kind of cringing in my seat when Mona said all those good things about me. I've not been a good husband. I've not been the best father around. My mother will tell you what a great son I've been. But it's okay. Not all of us have our imperfections. Invite them, and if we have God on our side, and if He can use people like these guys. David in the Bible was not a good father. He too had, I don't know how many wives and concubines and all sorts. The point is, if God can use them, He can use us. And we still are good in His eyes. Alright? Pursue our purpose. Or pursue your purpose. Or pursue my purpose. If you could use your strengths to fix one thing in your world, in your community, in your workplace, what would that be? Think about it carefully and write it down. I'm giving you 30 seconds. What do you think your purpose is? I challenged my calling and I left my job in Mahabazal and came to Bethany. My purpose was to see that the children are kept safe, to see that the children are happy, to see that the children grow up as well-rounded individuals. That was my purpose, I believe. And that's why we have a good sports day. We have great teams from basketball to soccer. We have a girls' soccer and a girls' cricket team now. I think they do kind of okay with their studies if you see our results every year. Our musicals are still spoken of. That was my purpose. What is your purpose? You need to find your purpose or your passion. Okay? Because a passion-fueled, purpose-driven story just helps us to feel good about ourselves and to make life good for those around us. We've heard so many Bible stories. Who do you think was the most passionate person in the Bible? Any guesses? Who had a purpose in the Bible? No guesses. Okay. Jesus. And I'll tell you why. Jesus he came actually to do one thing and one thing alone. And we don't know much about his childhood. We know a little bit. We know for 3 years he walked on this earth. And for 2.5 years, he had 12 people who followed him, his disciples, the apostles. They saw him heal the sick, touch the blind people and make them see. They saw him feed the 5,000 twice, 10,000. They saw him raise the dead. They saw him do all these things. But they did not know who this man was and what his purpose was. He even cast out demons. And I'll just tell you, a demon is a fallen angel, that's all. But he would cast these demons out of people. The demons knew who he was. And every time they spoke and they said, "You're the Son," he would shush them up because he didn't want his disciples knowing who he was from a demon. So after 2.5 years of doing all these things, calming the storm, everything, he decided to tell them. So, and listen carefully to the story because I don't know how many of you know this, and it's all in the Bible. It's in the Synoptic Gospels. You can read about it in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. He takes them to a place called Caesarea Philippi. This is a beautiful place at the foot of Mount Hermon, which is in the north of Israel. And I believe this is a beautiful snow-capped mountain. And in the middle of the mountain, there is a divide, and the snow melts and goes down and comes out as a full-fledged river at the bottom of this mountain. So he took these 12 people over there, and in the mountain there are niches and there are statues. There were many statues there. He showed them 2 statues. One was of Caesar. And this place was called Caesarea Philippi because it was under Roman rule, and Philippi was the second son of Herod. Herod had bought this place from the Romans. So it was called Caesarea Philippi. And one statue was of Caesar, a man who everyone revered as a god, and another statue was of a god called Pan. And popular mythology in that day said that he was a god, but he walked on earth as a man. And Jesus showed his 12 disciples these 2 statues. One of a god who was believed to have walked as a man, and another of Caesar, a man who was looked upon as a god. And then he asked them 2 questions. He said, "Who do you think the people say I am?" And they said, "Oh, you know, you're just in your 30s, you're young, but you're so intelligent. Maybe you're a reincarnation of John the Baptist, or maybe you're Jeremiah the prophet come back again." And Jesus said, interesting. And then he looked at them and he said, "Who do you guys think I am?" And the first person to put up his hand was Peter, the extrovert. And he said, "You are not from here. You are the Son of the living God." And that's the first time the disciples, I believe, actually came to know who he was. Then he goes on to tell them that he's going to do 2 things. Build his church. Until that time, there is no talk in the Bible about a church being built. He said, "I'm going to build." And then he talks about the cross. Can I ask you who the first lady was who said that he was the Son of the living God? The first woman in the Bible was Martha. Just a few weeks later, and a few pages down in the Bible, Martha says, "You're the Son of the living God." So he says, that was my purpose. I came here to die on this cross to save all of you. That was his purpose and his passion. What is yours? You got to write that down. Finally, think thankfully. You have to think of all the challenges and all the mistakes. Write down those 2 words, challenges and mistakes, that you made and that you faced, but you can be thankful for. Write down these 3 words. What strengths can I thank him for? What passion can I thank him for? Or can I be thankful about? What are the experiences that I've had that have broken me but built me up, and I can be grateful for and thankful for? Use every part of your story as gratitude, and we need to do this, and please write this line down. Train your brain to see the good within and around you. Train your brain to see the good within and around you. Thinking thankfully and practicing gratitude re-scripts our stories. Let me tell you very quickly, Miriam, the elder sister of Moses and Aaron, gave thanks to God after they crossed the Red Sea. She took out her tambourine and she danced and she sang. Hannah was Samuel, one of the most loved and best spoken about prophets in the Bible. Hannah had a husband called Elkanah, and he had 2 wives. You know, those days, in biblical days, they had many wives. People. So he had 2 wives, and the other wife had children, but Hannah was barren. And the other wife would also kind of tease her and goad her and say, you know, you're good for nothing. So she prayed and prayed, and finally Samuel was born. And in thanksgiving to the Lord, she and her husband Elkanah took Samuel to Eli, that priest, and dedicated this boy to God. So she was thankful and grateful. David was thankful every time he captured or they conquered or they killed the Philistines. He would get on his knees and praise God and thank Him. Solomon, his son, when he was able to build that beautiful temple, he thanked God. Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother, she was way beyond childbearing age and she had John the Baptist. So she thanked God. Mary, Jesus' mother, in that beautiful song of praise, Christ College has that Magnificat every year. Magnificat stands for My Soul Praises the Lord. When she had Jesus, the incarnate Son of God, she thanked God. And Jesus himself, he gave thanks to God before distributing the bread and the fish to the 5,000 people. So be thankful, okay? Write down every reason why you have to be thankful to God. I'm going to close with these lovely lines. Minutes turn into hours, hours into days, days into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. A lifetime passes us by so quickly. We keep running after things that are out of reach, forgetting what we are searching for is right here within us. Minutes into hours, hours into days, days into weeks, weeks, months, months into years. A lifetime passes us so quickly. We keep running after things that are out of our reach, forgetting that what we are searching for is right here within us. So seek your inner strengths, challenge your calling, restrict your regrets, invite your imperfections, pursue your purpose, and think thankfully.
One thing that Sir always says, usually after the message, you don't try to do anything so that you can have those thoughts in your mind. So I'm not going to do anything more, but I think he really deserves a bigger, because you know how much happens in Bethany, and you know how difficult the job must be. There's so many things happening in 6 different institutions. Robert says also here, every day there's some problem, and in between all that, to work this out. Yeah, so I think we should give him a big hand. And what we usually like to do is, like, if we can get into groups and pray, but this is all about retrospection. It's all about you and God. So why don't you just take a few minutes and just between you and God, not put something close to you, because some of it is your purposes, your secrets, so you don't want to share it with somebody. So why don't you just take a few minutes, close your eyes, and maybe pick calling. Maybe you pick passion. I love that line, passion, fuel, the purpose. And just make your own decisions within yourself. So I'm just going to lead in prayer, but before that, can you maybe you can raise your hands towards them. Auntie's here, Mona is here. And AKASH says, you can move your hand. It's just very symbolic. You can just raise your hands toward them as they pray. Father God, we know that you are sovereign, and your plans and your purposes over our lives, Lord, are just beyond what we can understand. And we know that we need so much of refueling to face each day and to face the challenges that we have ahead. So together, like your word says, when we come together in one accord, Lord, and we agree with one thing, that we ask your blessing over AKASH, Mona ma'am, Auntie Ryle, and the family, Noah, Nicole, and ma'am. Lord, we just ask that you will protect their health. Lord, we ask that you will protect their vision, the love that they have for you, how they honor you every single time. Lord, we just ask that you will honor them for that, and you will lift them up in ways that they can't even imagine. And together as a community, we just ask for that your presence and your power will become normal for them. They will walk every day in the light of that, in the light of that truth, in the light of your power. And their purpose is being refueled every single time by you, the author. ask a blessing over them, and we just know how grateful we all are for their commitment, for their sacrifices. So we ask that you will bless them, you will strengthen their purpose. And once again I say, Lord, that you will bless them with gifts that they can't even imagine, with blessings that they can't even imagine. Thank you, Lord. And for each one of us here, Lord, we're just so grateful for your presence, what we have learned today, what we have felt today. And we ask that it will not be lost. All that we have learned, Lord, we'll be able to put it back into practice. And so that our lives, every day, every minute, will be changed because of that. And we ask all this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you very much. There's some coffee and snacks out there. March 11th is our next Soulspring. Yeah, and I think most likely we will be here because exams will be going on. Thank you very much. Those who are here for the first time, we would really love to have your contact information, a phone number, or an email is even better, so we can send you information about the next Soulspring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All rise.